Greetings and welcome again to another episode of Sonic Odyssey, the music video channel dedicated to bringing you the last 5 decades or so of music in review and discussion format. Before we dive into today's topic, let's get the housekeeping out of the way. Please be sure to like the video by clicking the thumbs up button. That helps the YouTube algorithm get the video out to more viewers. Also, please subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button, and if you click the little bell icon next to it, that will alert you each time I post a new video. And lastly, you can consider clicking the share button, and there you can share the video with your friends through social media networks such as Facebook and Twitter, and there are lots of others to choose from as well. So please consider doing that. Lastly, I would most humbly ask you to please consider visiting my Patreon page. There's a link in the show description right below the video, and there you can see the different tiers that are available should you desire to be a patron of the channel. And you can have your name listed in the end credits of each video, or you could even go so far as to select an album for me to review on the channel. That's the housekeeping out of the way, and I thank you very much for your possible consideration of becoming a patron. Thank you. Today we're going to be looking at a band that's been around for about 41 or so years, at least in terms of recordings. Actually, it does go up to about 47 years or so if we look at the band as an entirety in its history from formation to today, and that would be Iron Maiden out of England. Iron Maiden formed originally in 1975 by bassist and primary songwriter Steve Harris, and he has been the driving force behind the band, and he, along with guitarist Dave Murray, are the two members who have appeared on every album that the band has released. Today we're going to be looking at the 17th album of the band's release, and this is their 2021 release entitled Senjutsu, and it is a double album, the second double album that the band released in their catalog, the last one being 6 years ago, or almost 7 years ago now, which was entitled Book of Souls. Senjutsu has reached #1 in 23 or more countries, and it is widely acclaimed and considered to be one of the best albums the band has ever produced. But let's get a little bit more history about the band before we go any further. As I said, the band has been around since originally 1975, and it was formed by bassist and primary songwriter Steve Harris. And the lineup of the band has changed a lot, but the pieces began to really come together around their 1980 debut album entitled Killers. In 1982, the band released one of their most popular and world-famous albums entitled The Number of the Beast, and this was the first recording to include vocalist Bruce Dickinson, who is a marvelous vocalist, and also had on it the guitarist Adrian Smith, who was now a part of the band. The Number of the Beast would be the last album that Clive Burr performed drums on. He was replaced in 1982 by Nico McBrain. So the lineup of the band at the recording of Number of the Beast was Bruce Dickinson on vocals, Dave Murray on guitars, Adrian Smith on guitars, Nico McBrain on drums, and Steve Harris on bass. And they had huge worldwide success with that release. It was, and still is, considered one of their landmark albums, and is probably getting a very special 40th anniversary release, according to some articles that I've read online recently. Over the years, the band remained primarily the same, but there was a brief period in the 90s where Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith left the band. Adrian Smith was replaced by Yannick Gers, and he is still with the band, and so now the lineup that recorded on Senjutsu and every album since the early 2000s release, Brave New World, has been the 5 members that I mentioned before, as well as Yannick Gers on guitar. So it's a 3-guitar lineup. The style of sound that Iron Maiden produces in their music has changed a lot as well. Originally, they were a very new wave of British heavy metal rock album oriented kind of band. They played heavy metal that was really quite unique, mostly driven by Steve Harris's galloping bass lines and the twin guitar attack of Adrian Smith and Dave Murray. Plus the marvelous vocal performances of Bruce Dickinson, who only has grown by leaps and bounds throughout his entire career. The style, though, did begin to change to a more progressive edge after the release of their album Power Slave, which was the first one where they really started getting into longer songs and more artistic and progressive styles within the form of heavy metal. And ultimately, this would lead to a change that was quite dramatic with their release of Brave New World, and that was their reformation of the core lineup, and it had a number of successes from it, and it was followed by a few albums. But the most important noteworthy thing about that period was that the band really had developed a much more definitive and signature sound, a more mature and less hard, less heavy sound. It's still heavy metal, but it's more hard rock heavy metal and much more progressive leaning without ever sounding like a really progressive band. They don't sound like Yes or Porcupine Tree or Rush or any of those progressive rock acts. They just have their own unique, truly special style of creating soundscapes and delivering them in marvelous fashion. The album Senjutsu has been broadly received very well. It is their 17th studio album, and it's gone to great critical acclaim. It was the first album that they recorded really rather secretively. They actually began recording it in 2019, but then of course we had the global pandemic which kind of shut down the world, and so that delayed the album's release because they didn't want to put it out and not be able to be on tour to support it, because this is a band that really loves to go out and tour and promote their material. The name of the album, Senjutsu, is roughly translated as strategy or tactics from the Japanese, and has their signature character, Eddie, on the cover, garbed in kind of samurai clothing and holding a katana. But the album is not a concept album, nor is it really in any way Oriental or Japanese themed. The songs have pretty much nothing to do with Japan whatsoever, so it's kind of an oddity that they went in that direction. I haven't really been able to find any specific justification or rationalization for using a Japanese name and the Japanese style artwork for the album. But it is what it is, and it's still a great album, and probably, as I said, they're one of their best, if not their best albums in their entire catalog. And that's pretty amazing considering these guys are in their 60s and have been doing this for 40 years, more than 40 years. One other thing of note about Senjutsu is that this is the first album in probably more than 30 years where Dave Murray is not given writing credits on any of the songs. And also, significantly, there are 3 tracks that are written solely by Steve Harris. Normally, the bandmates collaborate in pairs, such as Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson. They're known for writing a number of songs together, and Smith and Dickinson also have written songs together. But Steve Harris did write 3 songs on this double album himself. In total, there are 10 songs, and the album is just a touch over an hour or 20 minutes long. I think it clocks in at 1 hour 22 minutes. So it's, you know, it had to be a double CD release. They couldn't squeeze it all onto one CD. The first side or first disc of the album has 6 songs, and it features the single which was released originally for the album prior to the album's release, The Writing on the Wall, and also has the follow-up single, Stratego. Those songs had quite good success both on in terms of music video and airplay, and saw the band receive much critical acclaim for them. But let's get a taste for the album's sound and what Iron Maiden sounds like in the year 2022, although the album was released in 2021, by listening to a little bit of a snippet from the song taken from the first disc. It's the last song on the first side. It's entitled The Time Machine. The Time Machine was written by Yannick Gers and Steve Harris, and I chose this particular piece because I like the you can hear the 3 different lead guitars in the mix, and so you do get a sense that it is not a superfluous thing or an overdoing it or, you know, out of sorts sort of thing. There is a great sound structure in having the 3 guitar attack that they have, and they do all pull off phenomenal leads. Overall, the sound of the album has this matured sound of Iron Maiden. It is definitely more groove-oriented, and the galloping style of Steve Harris's bass playing is quite distinct and quite unique, and it does have that quality throughout the entirety of the full album. The next track we're going to take a little bit of a listen to is from later in the album, and that would be the final song on the album, Hell on Earth. And this was one of the Steve Harris solo written songs. So let's give a listen to that. I chose this portion of the song, although there's no vocals, because it demonstrates the style of transition that they use through some of their music. This one has a little bit more of a slow tempo and gentler opening, and then the drums kick in and we get a little bit more of the traditional Iron Maiden sound, and we have the guitar work again just proving invaluable to the soundscape. The band is one of the most influential and important bands in heavy metal. Their contributions through their career, I believe in recordings in terms of their EPs, albums, live albums, singles, are more than 40 releases in all. Plus they've had close to a half dozen or more DVDs and Blu-rays of their performances, a very good number of which came out only within the last 15 years. Their performances are incredible. Their stage shows are amazing to see, and they put on fantastic performances. Senjutsu is a marvelous album to listen to for its diversity of soundscapes. There is this almost world music style of heavy metal at play. In fact, one of the songs on the first disc is a bit of almost southern rock sounding music, where we can hear the style that Steve Harris is influenced by through his love of Jethro Tull, and that is clearly evident there in that song. Senjutsu is marvelously produced. The mixing, as ever, is phenomenal, and the band seems to have no sign of slowing down, although it is entirely possible this could be their last release. The band had originally stated when they released The Final Frontier that that was going to be their final album. That was in 2010, but they've since released 2 albums since then, and so who's to say if this is their final release. They do plan on touring for Senjutsu, and they have dates lined up through 2022 and probably going into 2023, but it really is not a certainty or a guarantee that there will be another recorded release studio album from the band, which is something we'll just have to wait on. It would be unfortunate if this ended up being their last album, but at the same time it's going out on a high because Senjutsu is a great heavy metal. I feel like I have to use that phrase really carefully because it's heavy metal, but it really is on the softer, gentler edge of heavy metal. It's not abrasive or confrontational. It's got energy and it's got vivaciousness to it. It's really a marvelous listen, but it's not like listening to a more mainstream heavy metal album such as Metallica or Megadeth or something of that nature, who tend to be more in the deeper, harder hitting sound. This is more of a mature, elder statesman kind of sound that Iron Maiden has developed with Senjutsu. The songs sometimes can be a little bit long. They have a tendency now to perform songs which are longer than they had on their earlier albums, and it's both to their benefit and also a little bit of a detriment. Because in some ways there is a sense that the music is almost too repetitive in terms of its use of sonic structures. But it's a personal issue. You know, some people really enjoy that continued repetitive nature, and others might find it a little bit overmuch. Personally, I fall into the category that it sometimes can be a little bit much. I loved their early albums. I still love listening to them, and I'm a very big fan of Senjutsu. I think it's one of those albums that you must listen to more than once before it really begins to reveal itself to you. It is worthy of multiple listens, but it is, at times, personally speaking, a bit dragging because of its repetitive nature. Some of the songs probably could have been pared down. But then again, on the flip side of that coin, we have those areas of openness where it is this repetitive bass line and rhythm section, but the overlay of the lead guitar work and the rhythm guitar work is just incredible to listen to, and each guitarist has their own unique sound, and so they contribute marvelous elements to the soundscape. So it's a difficult thing to do. I guess I'll settle on 4.25 out of 5 stars. So that is Iron Maiden's Senjutsu from 2021. I highly recommend you check it out. It's available digitally through Amazon, through iTunes, through Spotify most likely. You can get physical copies. It's highly worth your listen. And I thank you for your time and attention. Until next time, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And please consider visiting the Patreon page. And thank you. Peace. Be well. Bye-bye.